So let's jump in because we have a lot to discuss today. As I said, we're going to just do some quick recaps on the episodes that you put out this month and talk about some behind the scenes, some stuff that wasn't released in the actual podcast. So the first one is Skylar Nemetz, The Soldier, episode 140. And so as a reminder, this case followed two young couple really in their 20s. Skylar Nemetz, his wife Danielle, tragedy when Skylar shot Danielle, and there's no question there, like he shot her. The question was it an accident or was it intentional? And so a lot of comments that you got on Instagram about this case. So I want to talk a little bit about that, but first interested to hear, Jillian, why did you pick this case? What stood out here?
So this was a case that I had heard about years ago, and I knew the basic details, but I didn't know too much in depth about it. So to be honest, just selfishly, I wanted to cover it on the podcast so that I could find out what happened and then share with my listeners what I thought to be a fascinating case. Like you said, there's no doubt that Skylar shot and killed Danielle, but at the trial, like you said, it was all about intent. Did the gun accidentally go off as he was pointing it at her, or did he mean to murder her? It was also a very controversial case with very active participants on both sides. And what I mean by that is it's one of those cases where you'll likely find a message board or comments section where you have fierce defenders of Danielle, the victim, and who she was and how justice was served. And then you have fierce defenders of Skylar. And that includes his mom, who I believe I've seen on several comment sections and message boards, although it could potentially not be her. It could be somebody who's just posing as her, but she was definitely coming off as a fierce defender of her son and did not believe that he deserved any kind of punishment. So it's a very complex case with no doubt a lot of emotions. And I think that that probably comes out when you look at listener comments about the case or different emails that I've received about it. One interesting thing, because another thing I want to do here is talk about things that didn't make it into the episode, things I didn't include or things I, found in my research. And one of the things was there's this 48 hours interview with Erin Moriarty that's on YouTube. And she did this interview with Skylar during the trial and before the verdict. And I just thought some of his answers were just pretty interesting, honestly. His mom, he did talk about his mom, for example, and he said that his mom spent her life savings on his defense. She sold her jewelry, doesn't have a car anymore, that kind of thing. He said he did have to explain to her that what he did in the state of Washington is classified at least as negligence. And he said that it took her a while to come around and understand that. Another thing he said is that he knew that he made a mistake, but that he didn't know exactly how the court system works. So he didn't realize that he would have to go to prison. And he said that at first he thought any jury in their right mind would see that it was an accident. So I came across that interview and I just saw that there were just, some fascinating nuggets on his mindset, especially right before the verdict itself was announced, what he was thinking. And, like I said, I came across comments that were reportedly from his mom online. And so it was interesting to see that, she spent her life savings on his defense.
Yeah, I feel like what you're saying about his knowledge of what was going to happen just shows his age. He's so young, like a kid, essentially. And it just, that whole case felt very sad to me because I don't think that there was any premeditation there. In my opinion, I think he got mad and maybe he was just messing around, or maybe it was a moment of rage. I think you talked in your podcast about how he had this kind of explosion of rage when he would get angry that other people had seen. So maybe it was that, it was just a passion moment and he screwed up and he did something then that he obviously couldn't take back. What struck me as interesting, and I don't like to read in too much to people's reactions after a tragedy because I feel like everybody has a different reaction to trauma and pain. But he sat in the back of that cop car and he kept saying over and over again, it was an accident. I love my wife. I love my wife. I love my wife. And obviously, that's your wife, you know? If it was an accident, wouldn't you be saying, like, that was an accident? I didn't mean to do that. The gun just went off. We were messing around. But he kept saying he loved his wife. And for me, that felt like his remorse, because in that moment he got so mad that he just went off. That's where I landed on it. A lot of your listeners had commented on Instagram saying that he had training. And anybody who's had training, especially military training, knows how to use a weapon. And more importantly, they know the safety behind it. So, this excuse that he was cleaning his gun and it just went off didn't sit well with your listeners and with people in general. Although I think, what was it, 70% agreed with the verdict and 30% disagreed in your Instagram poll.
How much was it? It was
69% agreed with the verdict and 31% disagreed.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this one was a tough one. I don't know. I mean, I agree with those who say that, he was a military officer. He had training with guns. He was no stranger to how guns work. So it is kind of hard to wrap your mind around that he had the gun pointed at her head, and that I definitely don't think it accidentally went off. That part I don't believe. So I guess it would be whether it was something like you said, your theory, that he reacted in a rage for some reason and he did it and then immediately was like, oh crap, what did I do? Or if it was like a premeditated plan,
right?
Which obviously intent can be formed, in seconds. So yeah, I mean, it's just a very interesting case that I figured would garner a lot of buzz around it. It's also one that was obviously covered on 48 Hours. I'm sure, Dateline probably did one about it too, just because, yeah, it's not such a cut and dry case. Like, yeah, he did it, but why? And it's something that we may never know.